with the online world, there are so many opinions and so much homeschooling advice out there. And it's a little ironic because I am a homeschool YouTuber and I share advice and tips all the time based on the things that I'm learning. But there are some things that I'm really glad I have ignored over the years. And I'm going to share those with you. It's up to you to decide whether or not you want to take that advice or ignore it like I did. But these are things that I'm glad I ignored and I have no regrets about. Hi, and welcome to my channel. I'm Christine. I'm a homeschooling mom of 3 kids and a second-generation homeschooler. I live in New Zealand, and I've been homeschooling my 3 kids for 6 years now. I absolutely love it. It is such a blessing and a joy. Before we jump into today's video, I just want to remind you that I have a free homeschool resource library full of printables and tools. There's some Christmas things in there as well, so please go ahead and sign up for that if you haven't already. I would love to have you there. And I just send out an email once a week sharing what's going on in the background, sometimes my rambling thoughts on homeschooling and parenting and motherhood. It's never too long, I promise. I keep it short and sweet, but I would love to have you there. So sign up for that. It's linked down in the description below. I also wanted to remind you that Made to Homeschool, which is an online homeschool community, has their Black Friday sale going for the month of November. So if you haven't already had a look at that and taken advantage of it, please go ahead and look at the link down below. They have 30% off of all of their membership tiers, which is a big deal. And they also, you can sign up for free and check it out first, but they have so much to offer. Seriously, if you want homeschool community and you want tons of homeschool resources for a very affordable price, they have it. There's like cool live workshops and printables and all the things. So just wanted to share that before we get into it. But now I'm going to share the homeschool advice that gets shared a lot, especially on Instagram. And I'm really glad I ignored it. And I've ignored it pretty much from day dot. I will say that some of it influenced me to an extent, but the more I've been homeschooling, like the longer I've been homeschooling, the more I'm just like very firmly seated in this advice is not helpful to me. Number 1 is don't have a schedule, or that schedules are too restrictive and you just shouldn't have them. In fact, I actually saw this post and it made my heart stop just about on Instagram last week. And it was that we should not have schedules for kids. Kids do not need boundaries and schedules. Literally verbatim, it was like, children do not need boundaries and schedules. And let me just tell you that I could not disagree with that more adamantly if I tried. I'm on the complete polar opposite end of that, where I feel like I believe in the depths of my soul that boundaries and routines are so, so important for our children. Not inflexible routines and schedules, but I do believe they desperately need those. And I think that it's been taken to the extreme and it's actually very harmful for our children. I'm really glad I didn't follow that advice. I've always had a routine to our days. I've always had a rhythm to our days. And that has only ever been a blessing to our family. For 2 reasons. 1, it helps me. It helps me to just stay organized, and that helps me to stay disciplined with our consistency, with our homeschooling. Number 2, it has helped so much to avoid pushback from my children because they have expectations. They know what's coming next. They don't doubt it. They know that this is what we do. And especially in the younger years, I feel like that is so important to establish for our children because that is when they really do push the boundaries and they're like, I want to do this and I don't want to do that. And by just working on having those routines and rhythms, it helps them a ton. You know what it's like when you go to leave the park and the kid doesn't want to go. But when you set up a thing, okay, mom's saying at this time we're leaving, and you give them a little bit of, build up to that, it helps the transition into the next activity so much better. And there's a lot of research to back this up. I'm not just saying this, but it's also my lived experience. It's very helpful to have a routine. Now, I will caveat that to say that it should be a routine that has built-in margin, that there's room for flexibility, that there's room for the days where things just don't go well. And I do really like having anchor points in my day where we can kind of get back on track, even if things go awry. So that's very helpful to me. I'm so glad I never followed that advice. Have a routine and a rhythm to your day. I honestly just don't know how people get anything done well and with any consistency when there's like you wake up and there's no plan for any day ever. I don't know it. My brain doesn't think that way. Maybe there are people out there, but I firmly believe that for the sake of our children, it actually is really important that they have some level of rhythm to their day so they know what to expect And it helps so much. It really does. So that's number one. Number two is, I'm looking on my phone because I've written things down. Anything that resembles public school is bad. This is a very popular opinion that you see online. Don't try and recreate school at home. Anything from public school is inherently evil and bad, and you shouldn't have it in your homeschool. I actually wrote an email about this the other day, and I think I shared about it on Instagram as well. No, guys, this is a dumb piece of advice. It just is, okay? Now, I understand where it comes from because people have essentially a trauma response to a lot of stuff that has happened in public school because there are aspects of public school that are terrible. I know. I attended public school when I was younger, okay? I wasn't homeschooled my entire education. And I was bullied, and there was tons of peer pressure, and the academics were not fantastic. But not all aspects of public school were bad. Why are we throwing the baby out with the bathwater? There's so much that we can still use that is also used in public school that we can use in our homeschool. It's great. You know what worked really well for me growing up? Tests. I did really well with tests. I was highly motivated by doing tests. And one of my kids is like that as well. If I was like, I'm not going to use this because they use this in public schools, I would be robbing that child of something that works really well for them. We as homeschoolers like to think that we have good critical thinking skills. It's something we really want to nurture and foster in our children. And yet, as a community, as a whole, unfortunately, I am seeing a lot of people lacking in those things. Okay, let's critically think about what is going to be helpful in our homeschool and what is not. And I think part of the problem is that we have outsourced our thinking to all the gurus on social media. And again, I know that's ironic. I am someone on social media who is sharing my opinions. But when you listen to me, I don't want you to try and replicate my homeschool and all of my opinions. I want you to look at your family and say, what is going to work really well in our homeschool? What is going to benefit my children? And then I want you to take the parts that I share that are going to work for you and completely discard the things that are not, okay? I never want to see anybody replicating my homeschool. That is not what I intend. If you're doing that, you're not doing your job well, okay? So we need to keep our eyes fixed on our kids and our family and pull the resources that are going to work for us and never try and replicate anybody else's thing at all. I know that I kind of went on like a tangent with that, but let's see the things that we can use. If they use it in public school and it works well for your child, then use it. If you have a classroom set up with multiplication charts on the wall and it looks like a classroom, good for you if it works for your family. Like, let's stop villainizing other people's homeschooling experiences, okay? If it works for them, it works for them. Who's to say that your way is better than their way? Let's just stop villainizing everything that comes out of public school. And I am saying this as someone who is adamantly opposed to sending my children to public school. It would have to be very extenuating circumstances for me to send my kids to public school. Like, basically, there's no other choice, okay? So I'm saying that as someone who holds very strongly to homeschooling my kids. Let's just not villainize everything. All right, next thing is don't do academics before age 6. I did preschool with all of my children. Every single one of them. I started at different times for all of them. My eldest was like 4.5 when we started doing some preschool work. My second was 3 years old, and then my youngest was more like 4, 5-ish. And it kind of gets hazy with the siblings because they kind of tend to jump in on stuff earlier because their older siblings are doing school and they want to be included, and you need to keep them occupied, let's just be honest. But I have absolutely zero regrets about doing academics with my children before age 6. I have some of the fondest memories doing school with them at that age. And I think the problem is, again, people are too black and white with things. I think that doing academics with your child at that age is having them sit at a desk for 6 hours a day and work on worksheets. And I will say that I don't actually know anyone homeschooling their preschooler that way. Most of us are very balanced in our approach. We do 15 minutes of working on letter sounds and maybe another 15 minutes of something later in the day, and it's broken up and it's very age appropriate. We did tons and tons of reading together when my kids were little, and I just would not exchange those memories for anything. It was so precious. And I also love those years because they're really full of grace. You can make a lot of mistakes in those years and it's not going to hugely affect your child. Like, you can find the curriculum that works and chuck out the one that doesn't. There's so much grace in those early years, and I would rather have the time to experiment then and then settle into your homeschooling a lot better in years to come than to try and do that from age 6. Now, I'm also not saying that you have to do academics before that. Like if you don't have a kid that's going to work for, that's fine. I think there's other areas you can be working in, for instance, rhythms and routines and like a lot of that kind of stuff. But I will be an advocate for preschool. I think it's really fun. You can create great memories and it doesn't have to be like this awful thing of sitting at desks. And I will also say that my middle daughter especially loves worksheets. She loves them. She loved them at age 3. She would sit there for ages doing school in comparison to our older brother, who it's always been an effort to get him to sit down and write anything. So let's, again, use our critical thinking skills here, people, and just recognize each child and their unique needs. My next piece of advice that I'm really glad I did not follow, and that was to take a break if a child is not enjoying their school or pushing back. And I will say that we have changed things up, but we have never stopped school entirely for that reason. There are times where we've had to ease off on things where we couldn't push forward in whatever thing they were learning because their brain needed time to click, but we'd always go back and like review concepts that they'd already learned. So we didn't just stop entirely. But that is a very loud opinion in the homeschool community, to just take a break, just stop. Don't push anything anymore. And I was always like, but then what? Like, what do we do with our days? We have to do something. And I know that there's going to be those with the school of thought of like, just live life and all that. But I know that Rachel from, I was going to say 7 and All, but she's changed her channel name. I think it's The Nerdy Homeschooler now. She has 3 young boys and she's very much in a stage of life where I used to be a few years ago. And I remember those days so well. Your days are chaotic and it kind of feels like you're living from nap time to nap time because you've got very busy kids who are like, it's hard work. It is. And I really appreciated having something to do with our days, where it wasn't always leaving the house, because honestly, I didn't love leaving the house all the time. And it helped the preschooler and the toddler to have something to do, and my older child something to do. And the idea of just not doing anything wasn't helpful at all. And I know that Rachel spoke about this in her video as well, which I'll try and remember to link here for you because it was a really good video, and she did touch on a few of the points that I have brought up today. But just the advice to just take a break was never helpful to me, and I'm really glad that I didn't follow that advice. I always filled the void with something that was benefiting us in some other way, and that was really helpful. If you find the advice just unhelpful, like I know the advice is said with a good heart, but there's no practical way of doing it, it's okay not to take it and to figure out another way to get around that, because that's what I did. And after 6 years, I'm really grateful that we haven't just like stopped anything entirely. And I also don't want my kids to grow up with the mindset that when something is challenging, that we just don't do it. I think it can be helpful to take a step back and take a breath. Like for instance, in our homeschool day, if a child is just like cognitively not getting a concept and there's just a lot of frustration and pent up emotions, for sure, take like a 15-minute breather and go run around outside for a second. But then we come back to it and we continue it and we finish it. And I think too often this advice is given with the idea of like, take a break and just do something else instead of taking a break and getting back to it. And that's the thing. That is what builds endurance and what is the word I'm looking for? Resilience. That's what it is. Endurance and resilience. That's how we build it, is by not giving up. We might just take a breather, but then we get back on the bus and we carry on. So yeah, I'm really glad I never took that advice. I don't think it would have been helpful in our school. All right, and then the last one is to not use worksheets or reduce them to as little as possible. Again, we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater, guys. Not every child has an aversion to worksheets. In fact, some kids are absolutely going to love them. I have 2 kids who love worksheets. One, not as much, although in some cases it's still been really helpful. So let's use critical thinking skills when it comes to our kids and what they individually need. And just because something is not enjoyable for your child does not mean that it's bad for your child. In fact, it might be the polar opposite. It may be very, very good for your child to be working on that. I'm not someone who uses worksheets as the entirety of our homeschool. We definitely have more of an eclectic approach to it, but I absolutely see their value and they have been really helpful. And also, worksheets are just easier. You can just pull them out and do them. And that makes being consistent with your homeschooling that much easier. And when you're struggling with being disciplined, I think that setting yourself up to be able to do it easily is a huge step up. So don't discount it just because it is used in public schools and the popular opinion out there is not to use them. They can be incredibly beneficial. So look at your homeschool, look at what you need, look at the areas that you're struggling with, and see how you can meet those needs in whatever way possible. Don't discount it just because it doesn't stick with some purist homeschooling method, okay? We align too closely to those, and we end up worshiping some homeschool philosophy instead of actually schooling the children in front of us who need us so much. Don't sacrifice your child to the altar of some random homeschool philosophy that you think sounds really shiny and pretty. Make sure that you're serving the child in front of you and meeting the needs that they have. I'll get off of my soapbox now. Those are the things that I'm really glad that I did not fall into the trap of doing the advice that I followed. I did the opposite of all of those things. And the more I see the homeschool community as a whole, online especially, but even in person, I want to say, let's stop just putting everything into a box. Let's take it back to the basics and look at our kids and our families and what they need and build your homeschool around that, because that is what is going to be successful for you. There is not going to be any single homeschool influencer that you're going to tune into that is going to have the answers for everything that you need. You can take bits and pieces, apply it to your homeschool, but nothing is gospel. I'm very sure and certain in a lot of areas in my homeschool, but that doesn't mean it's going to be right for you. And there are a lot of homeschool influencers who do share things as though their way is the only right way. And I understand we do that to a certain extent because we have to be secure in what we're doing for our children. But again, the whole joy and beauty of homeschooling is that we have freedom in how we educate our children. And as long as we're putting them first and making sure that our goals are aligned with that, then that is the most important thing. So I hope this is helpful and encouraging to you. I hope you found it a blessing, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. I will chat to you later. Bye.